first service. He was literally on the second. Felt pressure after that. All right. Thank you. Okay. So the last 2 weeks, Jace and I have had the privilege, opportunity, blessing, whatever you want to call it, to be able to stay home, take some time off work, and just be with our family, enjoy the holidays, and get some rest. And the funny thing is, the thing that I've enjoyed the most is being able to work out with Jace in the mornings. So we're in the garage, and he is pumping iron. He's got his Bowflex, all the weights, and so he's training to make those gains. And I train for overall health. So it's a little bit cardio, strength, Pilates, calisthenics, all the things. Sometimes he looks at me and he's like, "What are you doing?" So each of us is training for our end goal, right? We know what we want. So weightlifters train for strength, and they'll increase weight over time. This is called progressive overload. They fatigue, and they train till failure. But even the weightlifters know, the strongest person knows, eventually they're going to have to let go of the weight, right? Our bodies only have the capacity to hold so much, or our muscles burn out and we collapse under the pressure. If we look at a marathon runner, complete opposite. They run with no weight at all. They actually want to pick like the lightest, most breathable clothing to run in because it's less resistance. So they know that the more weight that they carry requires more energy. And they fatigue faster, and it's not the most efficient for their end goal. They understand the assignment, and they understand the end goal. So if we look at Hebrews 12:1, it says, "Let us lay aside every weight and sin, and let us run the race with endurance that is set before us." Well, what is our assignment? What is our goal? In Matthew 28:19 tells us that we're to make disciples, right? That's a great commission. God has called us to preach the good news and tell people about Jesus. So this is a faith race, a long distance race, right? The assignment to make disciples is a lifelong, and it requires endurance and faith. If we go back to the verse again, it says, "Lay aside every weight and sin." Paul isn't talking about literal weight. I think we all know that. But he's talking about anything that's going to hold you back, or things that you're carrying that God is asking you to put down because you were never meant to carry them. So I'll focus on the heaviness that comes from past experiences, current situations, and even future ambitions and desires. So past experiences. This can be missed opportunities or mistakes that we've made. Kind of those woulda, coulda, shouldas in life. Maybe things that were spoken over you, or things that were not spoken to you that should have been. This can lead to insecurity. Comparison can feel like a heavy burden. Rejection, trauma, unanswered prayers, pride, self-centeredness, unfulfilled expectations of things you thought should look a certain way, bitterness, shame, and regret. If we don't learn to lay the things down from the past, we're tethered to those moments, and we can't change them, and we can't move forward. Maybe you're in a current storm, a really hard situation. You're like, "Lord, this feels so heavy. I don't even know how I'm going to make it to the next day." This can look like financial situations, family turmoil, loss of a loved one, addictions, and guilt. Or maybe you felt like God has promised you something, but it hasn't happened yet. And now you're holding on to that promise, which is great. We want to hold on to the promises of God. But the burden comes when you hold on to the control of when and how this is supposed to happen. A little bit about me. I've learned that my greatest strength and victory has come when I've learned to lay things down, right? I've gone through some heavy things in my life, and as I've done that, I've noticed that I've picked up some weights, and I've carried them around with me. And I see this as like a backpack where it's sitting there, and I'm, going through life, and there's like one rock, something happens, I'm like, I'll just put this in my backpack and carry it with me. And maybe you have like 3 or 4 stones, and it doesn't feel that heavy. But as you go through life, if you don't start laying that stuff down, eventually you're going to stop and you're going to crumble under the pressure of all that weight. So 2024 came, and I told God, I said, I want this to be a year of healing and health for me. And as I've done that, I think I've began to feel the heaviness of all the things from my past, all the things that I've experienced. And I felt like God told me, you're feeling this heaviness now because you weren't willing to lay it down before. So now I have to allow you to feel this so you can see how it's stopping you. And then I was reminded that God's love has been unstoppable for me. His grace has been unstoppable in my life. His faithfulness has been unstoppable in my life. So why am I going to allow these things that he isn't asking me to carry? The only thing he wants me to do is to tell people what Jesus has done for me. That's the burden that I need to carry, not all the other stuff. And so I'm learning to open my backpack and just release those weights and take them out. And as I know that I've taken some out, God's been good to me. And I've taken them out and released them, set them down, but then you kind of circle back, right? You circle back and you pick them up and you're like, I'm going to carry this once again, and I don't know why. But God, once again, is like, just lay it down. Let it go. If you want to be unstoppable for me, I need you to let this go. So to be unstoppable, not buckle under the weight, we have to be willing to step back and acknowledge that sometimes our hold on the things are hindering God's plan for us. In Philippians 3:13-14, it says, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind, straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Jesus Christ. So how do we move forward? First, we have to know our assignment. We have to come before God humbly and ask him to reveal what is holding us back, what is burdening us, what is slowing us down, or what could stop us. Ask God for his strength and will in current situations. Release your ambitions and dreams to him. Tell him your desires and willingness to trust him in his direction and timing. Hold on to the promises, but release the control. Lay it down and trust him. And I'll leave you with one last thing. Only you can run your race. You shouldn't try to run anyone else's, but you have to be willing to do the work, to lay it down. Not only that you can make it through the finish line, but that you can run your race with joy.